For the first time, a country from outside Europe has been invited into a summit built exclusively for European leaders. That country is Canada. Prime Minister Mark Carney is traveling to Armenia to attend the European Political Community Summit, a forum born out of war, economic fractures, and a rapidly shifting global order. This is not just another diplomatic visit. It's a signal that Canada is no longer viewed as just a North American player, but as a country stepping into wider strategic relevance. Before we go deeper, if you value clear, fact-based geopolitical analysis like this, consider subscribing to Global State. Because this isn't just about one summit, it's about where Canada is positioning itself in a world that is changing faster than ever.
Prime Minister Mark Carney is off to Armenia this weekend for meetings with European leaders about strategic issues that touch on defense and the economy. He'll be attending the European Political Community Summit, and it's the first time that a country that's not inside Europe is part of these meetings. These meetings have been going on since the 2022 full-scale invasion of Ukraine by Russia, and they touch on how to better economically integrate the continent and to deal with strategic issues around defense. These meetings include not just the EU, but other countries like Iceland, Britain, Armenia, Azerbaijan, and Turkey. And they're meant to sort of shore up Europe's way of responding to these broader issues, whether it's coming from Russia and defense concerns, China with economic concerns, and lately, what's going on in Washington. Carney's office has framed these meetings as a way to advance Canada's diversification, specifically after a defense deal signed last year, in which Canada can work with European defense firms on contracts and secure loans from the EU. Canada's also trying to diversify trade and double non-US exports by 2030.
To understand the weight of this moment, you first have to understand what this summit represents. The European political community was created in the aftermath of Russia's invasion of Ukraine, a turning point that forced Europe to rethink its economic integration, defense coordination, and strategic autonomy. By design, it is a European space, a space where nations coordinate responses to Moscow, manage economic risks, and increasingly navigate tensions not just with Beijing but with Washington as well. And yet Canada has now been invited into that space. That doesn't happen casually. It happens when a country is seen as relevant, when its leadership is viewed as credible, and when others see real value in bringing it into strategic alignment. It would be easy to dismiss this invitation as symbolic recognition. That would be a mistake. Because the intent behind this visit is far more deliberate. Carney is not attending to observe, he is attending to position. His office has made it clear this trip is directly tied to Canada's effort to diversify its economic relationships, reduce its reliance on the United States, and expand its footprint in European markets. That includes deeper defense cooperation with European firms, access to EU financing mechanisms, expanded trade and investment partnerships, and, critically, a long-term goal to double non-US exports by 2030. This is not diplomacy for visibility. This is diplomacy aimed at restructuring Canada's economic foundations.
So it's the first time a non-European leader has joined this European Political Community Summit. What do you make of Canada's position at this forum?
Well, first of all, I do think we should be flattered as a country for the invitation, because it is a reflection of how America is rewriting the rules, how the rest of the world is struggling to figure out how do we accommodate this, and the degree to which the world is looking to the speech that Prime Minister...
Comments from Davos may have hinted at this approach, a subtle signal, a glimpse of intent. But that's not why Mark Carney is going. He's going for something far more deliberate. As has been pointed out, Carney is willing to accept invitations anywhere if it puts him in the same room as European leaders. Because that's where influence is built, that's where economic ties are strengthened, trade relationships expanded, investment channels opened. This is a coordinated effort, a relentless campaign to attract global capital, especially from Europe, into Canada. Because the reality is clear, Canada must begin to offset the growing economic risks coming from the United States, And that's what makes this moment even more significant. It's happening at a time when the global order itself is shifting. Across Europe, there is a growing recognition something is changing. The United States is becoming less predictable, both economically and strategically. China continues to act as a long-term structural competitor, and in between, countries are being forced to rethink their alignments. Even within these discussions, there is a quiet but clear acknowledgement. The world is actively trying to adapt to changes coming out of Washington. In that environment, power alone is no longer enough. Countries are searching for stability, for reliability, for partners that offer consistency, credibility, and long-term thinking, and Canada under Carney is positioning itself as exactly that. But what truly stands out here is not just the invitation, it's the strategy behind accepting it. Carney is executing a deliberate expansion of Canada's diplomatic footprint, placing himself, and by extension Canada, inside rooms where decisions are being shaped. Not because Canada has traditionally belonged there, but because Canada is now making itself relevant there. This is not passive diplomacy, this is active positioning, and it reflects a clear understanding of how influence is built in modern geopolitics.
Well, it sort of comes back to the observation that Mr. Carney made. This is the world that we live in now. So in a world where China is China, India is India, and suddenly it appears as though the U.S. has turned on us all, do we have to instead focus our attentions, our foreign policy, on self-interest? Do we have to move rather from this idea of trying to advance our broader public interest and human values, trying to project our values around the world, to trying to secure objectives, trying to secure transactional deals? And that's got to be the real politic of where we are. And people are right to observe that that is what's driving our foreign policy right now. And frankly, not everyone in Canada supports that, but it would appear that a majority of Canadians do.
There is also a deeper shift taking place beneath the surface. Canada's foreign policy under Carney appears to be moving away from a primarily values-driven model toward a more pragmatic, interest-driven approach. That shift is reflected in a willingness to engage broadly, prioritize economic outcomes, and operate within the realities of the current global system, rather than idealized versions of it. It's not without criticism, but it's also not unique. Because in an environment defined by uncertainty, countries are prioritizing resilience over rhetoric, and Carney's strategy aligns with that reality. What this ultimately changes is not just Canada's presence at a single summit, it changes how Canada is being positioned globally. For years, Canada's role was largely defined within a US-led framework. That assumption is now being challenged. Under Donald Trump, the United States has shifted toward a more transactional and often inconsistent approach, imposing tariffs on allies, revisiting agreements, creating uncertainty in relationships that were once stable. That strategy may project strength domestically, but internationally it has had a different effect. It has pushed partners to look elsewhere, to search for stability, for predictability, for partners that don't constantly shift positions. And this is where Canada, under Mark Carney, is beginning to step in. Not by replacing the United States, Maurice, but by offering what it is increasingly failing to provide: consistency. The invitation to this summit reflects that shift. It suggests that Canada is no longer seen simply as an extension of North America, but as a country capable of operating independently in major strategic discussions. And that is how influence evolves. Not through declarations, but through reliability. This visit to Armenia is not just a diplomatic engagement. It is a signal of repositioning, a signal that Canada is actively redefining how it engages with the world, where it builds its partnerships, and how it secures its future. The invitation itself reflects recognition, but the strategy behind it reflects intent. And if that intent translates into sustained engagement, expanded partnerships, and tangible outcomes, then this moment may come to be seen as part of a broader transition, not one where Canada replaces existing powers, but one where it becomes increasingly difficult to ignore. If you want analysis that goes beyond headlines and focuses on the deeper shifts shaping global politics, subscribe to Global State. Because where Canada goes next is becoming a far more important story